Well, okay, everyone, good evening. My name is Shiri Sandler. I am so glad to be joining you all tonight. Thank you for being here. I am a grandchild of Holocaust survivors and a new board member of Voices of Hope. And I'm excited to be here tonight to welcome Consolee Nishimwe, who I've known for many years, including in my work as the managing director of the Agahozo Shalom Youth Village in Ramagana, Rwanda. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to Consolee, tonight's speaker and a survivor of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. She is the author of Tested to the Limit, a genocide survivor's story of pain, resilience, and hope. Many of us in America think of what we will learn about tonight as the Rwandan genocide, but I hope that one of the things you take away tonight, in addition to Consolee's story and her incredible fortitude, is how this intentional, particular persecuting of the Tutsis came to be in 1994. Tonight, we're going to talk about Consolee's book, learn about the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and about her courage, her survival, and I think for anyone who knows her, the clearest thing about Consolee is her message of hope. Consolee is a committed genocide speaker and an advocate for survivors who have suffered physical and emotional torture. She is also a defender of global women's rights, and I'm honored to count her as my friend. There will be time for questions at the end of the evening, so please feel free to send them to me and the other hosts in the chat. So thank you everyone for being here, and Consolee, we shall begin. So I want to help the audience understand a little bit tonight about the history that led to the genocide. It started really far before the genocide with the system of racial categorization that was a legacy of Belgian and German colonization. This system led to, among other things, a system of discrimination and periods of Tutsi massacres for decades leading up to the genocide. Can you, Consolee, tell us a little bit about the discrimination your family experienced as Tutsis before the genocide and what that was like for you as a child?
Thank you. I want to thank you very much and for having me, and you're incredible, amazing. Thank you, Shiri, and thank you, the Voices of Hope, for hosting this conversation. I really, really appreciate you, Kathy, and everyone, Dr. Joel. Thank you very much. And everyone who is here, thank you so much for taking your time to be here with us and talk about my book and the history of Rwanda. And it's truly an honor for me to be here tonight with you. Like Shiri said, you know, before my parents, I was born in Western province of the country. I experienced the genocide at the early age of my life when I was younger. I grew up I didn't necessarily know very well who I was when I was little, because my parents, despite the fact that my parents were persecuted even early on in their lives because of being Tutsis, the genocide didn't only happen in 1994, it happened also in 1959. 1960s and 60s, also in 1973. As a result of that, there were many Tutsis who lived in exile for many years. And those who remained in the country, like my parents and some of my family members, we kept going through the persecution. So I was very fortunate because my parents were teachers. They managed to give me a home where I felt comforted and loved. But I learned throughout my life that being a Tutsi in the country was not easy. I remember when I was younger, we were asked to stand up in the classroom when I was little in elementary school. But at that time, I didn't grasp well what it meant until I was in junior high school, when I felt, when I was bullied by a classmate. That's when I knew who I was. And then my parents also were going through persecution at work because of being a Tutsis. I used to hear, you know, discrimination, dehumanization language used at that time. and calling us cockroaches and snakes. There was a radio at that time, RTLM, which was actually there to incite the hatred against the Tutsis. So I grew up in that environment, and I knew that I never knew that it was going to go to an extent where they wanted to exterminate minority Tutsis in the country. So I knew that being a Tutsi was not easy in the country at that time. But for those who probably don't know very well, a little bit of the background of how it started. Before those discrimination we had, Rwanda was a monarchy system. So before it was, we had a system where it was social classes, and before at that time, and then we had German came first, and then Belgium took over. That's how they started, changing the whole system, and they introduced ID card, which was a way of dividing people at that time in the country. So that ID card was, they mentioned whether you are Tutsi and Hutu and Twa. So, and because they, when they left, actually they left where they put on power the Hutus who remained on power at that time, and the Hutus persecuted the Tutsis many years. That's how, we became, part of the Tutsis. So my family had that ID card. So, and that's how the discrimination started. And, briefly, but you can read also the whole history of how it happened, but briefly, that's how it started. So, and that's how everything started, and Tutsis became, they were called the names, and then I grew up and I was born in that kind of environment. So maybe to give you a little brief of what happened. So
Thank you, Consolee. And I think, when we in America think about race, we understand it as something immutable, right? Something sort of unchangeable, whether or not that's correct, even in our system. But in Rwanda, this was really, as you said, a social class that was codified by these ID cards into race, so to speak. And it became something inescapable. In your book, you talk a little bit about what you've just spoken about, right? This discrimination that your parents experienced and your memories of that as a child. But despite that, your childhood really was filled with a family rich in love and strong bonds and a really strong community. And I think one of the things that's so powerful about your book is this picture that you draw of the family members that you loved and how important that is, right? As a witness to speak to who these people were to you and in community, and to remember their names. And I think, many here tonight are descendants of survivors and of various genocides, and know that urge themselves, right, to know these names and to write down these names. It's clear that the childhood you had ended when the Rwandan president's plane was shot down on April 6th, and the Interahamwe, the Hutu militia, began their planned annihilation of Tutsi and also moderate Hutus. Can you talk us through a little bit what happened to you and your family in the following weeks and months, as the 100 days of the genocide took place?
Oh, thank you for that question. So, like you were mentioning earlier, I was very fortunate to have a beautiful childhood with my both parents and my siblings. We were 5 kids. I was the oldest. So despite the fact that, within the country, we were going through the persecution being a Tutsis, but I was very fortunate. My parents gave me a home where I felt comforted and loved and cared for by my parents. But when the genocide started, immediately everything changed. My dreams as a young person, the joy I had, everything completely changed. So I had to experience unimaginable horrors that I've never wished for anybody to experience in their lives. So like many other Tutsis, that first time when everything started right after, the beginning of April 7th, immediately we were forced to go into hiding, like many other Tutsis in the country. So my parents, my siblings, all of us, we were living actually in the village. We're not living in the city. So the thought came through our mind was just to seek refuge to our Hutus neighbors, those who were friends. And of course, many horrible things happened. But the first image I have in my mind is to see people I know, like friends who were Tutsis and families, homes being burnt. That image don't leave my mind. And also to see ourselves, don't know where we're going, just running on the street and seeing women who are older women, kids who are supposed to be in their home. Now they are running to seek refuge. That image of seeing everybody crying to God, because Rwanda is a majority of people, we are Christians. So a lot of people were, asking God for help. God, help us and be with us. That image of people who were actually seeking refuge. I remember there was a group of people who were at the communal office because people thought maybe somehow you will be helped, but no one would ever think that they were going to kill us the way they did it. And I never forget the image of people who are walking on the street going to the stadium. That image don't leave my mind. It's going to remain with me for the rest of my life. That's the first thing that comes through, every time whenever I talk about the genocide, that comes through my mind, the first thing that I saw at that time.
Consolee, what happened to the people who went to the stadium?
They actually, at that time, at the communal office, because where we lived was Kibuye. For those who don't know, the area is called Kibuye, which is now called Karongi District. That's where I'm from. And there was a communal office at the mayor's office, which we call a mayor's office. A lot of people gathered there hoping that he can help them. And we were living not too far from there. And he decided, along with the governor at that time, to take everybody to the stadium. And the plan was to have as many people as they could there so that they can kill them. So, and a lot of people took the road and we followed the crowd as well. So, and we were thinking maybe we can find a refuge also in the stadium. But on our way there, my mom decided to tell all of us, we can't keep going. So we decided to go in a different direction, go to a family friend. So, and the rest of the people who went to the stadium, later on, they were murdered. Almost everybody was murdered. And even a few of the people who survived live with the consequences, trauma, and it was hard for anyone to escape there because they shoot them, they slaughter them with machetes and clubs, and it was horrible. And there's also a memorial there, and there was a church there, Saint Jean. It's called the Saint Jean Church. So a lot of people were murdered there too, as well. So it was one of the horrific scenes for anyone. I have friends and my family members who were killed there. So it was one of the most horrible things that happened at that time. So yeah.
Thank you for telling us that. You described this moment where your mother decided you were going to go a different way. And one of the things that really struck me reading your book is how much your fate and the fate of the people you love rested in these incredibly fast moments. And these very, these moments where there was no good option, right? No option seemed good. And you talk a lot about the choices people had to make in those moments, the choice your mother made, or in a devastating moment in your book, your aunt, how people react out of fear. Your mother, though, comes through as this very strong pillar, really, this incredibly strong, caring, and together, for lack of a better way to put it, woman. Can you talk a little bit about what you and your sister and your brothers went through with your mother?
Yeah. My mom is a very, very strong woman. She's my shiro. I call her my shiro, my hero, my shiro. She's one of those people that I can't even myself think if I was in her shoes, what I would have done, carrying these children and having another one on her back. And who was 16 months old. My youngest brother was 16 months old because we were ranging from age 14, I was 14, 11 years old, my sister, and my other brother who was 7 years old, and 16 months old. And we were all young. And she carried the youngest one on her back the whole time. Whenever we were hiding in the bushes and trying to find refuge to a neighbor. But before, my dad was killed early on, April 15th. That's when he was murdered. Right after that, my mom had to find ways to carry me and my siblings everywhere she can knock the door of a neighbor, a Hutu neighbor, someone who she thought maybe could help us. And it was not easy for my mom, but she kept comforting me and my siblings the way she could. As you can imagine, the 16-month-old is someone who's supposed to be home and is a kid, is a baby. And many times he will say, I want to be home. I want to go to my home. And like any other kid, he couldn't understand why we were in the situation we were at that time. It was very, very hard for my mother, but we kept going and knocking doors, being hungry many times, and our feet swollen. It was rainy season. And I remember many times whenever we go through the sorghum plantation at that time, and we would just go through these bushes. It was very muddy, and sometimes she will fall down and will fall behind her. So it was very, very tough. Sometimes when I pull that image in my mind about how she was able to manage the whole time, and whenever we got a chance to find someone who was kind enough to take us in their home, and she would be making sure that we, at least a little thing we got to eat, if they give us something to eat, sometimes she would never eat. So with times that she would just let us make sure we had something in our stomach. So it was very, very tough. My mom she's a strong woman. I call her pillar of our strength. So in the book, so she's amazing.
Yeah, she's clearly remarkable, and I'm so glad you have her. One of the things you describe in the book that I think is just astounding, right, is kind of the closeness to the killers, the physical proximity, even when you're in hiding. And it's not once, it's constant. And you describe at one point hearing the killers talking about their killing and what it's like and why they're doing it. And I think it's such an unusual experience. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that was like at such a young age, to hear these people, some of whom you had known, some of whom were your age, talking about engaging in murder.
There were times, many times, we met people whom I thought maybe they were good friends of our family. I thought maybe they were good people. And because my parents, all the time they have told me to love people, all of a sudden I'm hearing people talking, being happy about how they have murdered people, the human beings like them. I remember the first time I heard that, we were hiding in the ceiling. That's when these killers followed my dad. And later on that evening, I heard them saying they were rewarding themselves with beers because there was a bar near the house. So they were, drinking and rewarding themselves, having conversation, how they are doing a good job. And working actually during the genocide meant to go to work. Work meant to kill Tutsis. So they were applauding themselves how they are murdering Tutsis. And I never thought I was going to hear these people saying how they murdered my dad. My dad, who was a teacher teaching their children, educator in the community who was kind. My dad, for the people who knew my dad, was a very, very good person. He had a huge heart, and he took care of every child who came to him. I remember my mom once told me when my dad, used to go through the persecution at work. And once my mom told him, he said, "Why don't you have change, profession? Because I don't like the way you are treated. We are all treated." Sometimes my dad was worse than my mom at work. So, and my dad told my mom, "No, God is not going to ask me what these people have done to me. God is going to ask me what I did. Every child who came to him, what I did, how I did, what I did to them. So my job is to care for every child who comes to me, not what people are doing to me." So every time I think about that, it really gives me the courage to go on with life. That's really one of the, I feel like a wealth of wisdom from my dad I carry within myself. So, and now to hear people being happy and learning later on how my dad was tortured in the most horrific way, it's painful. It was really painful. And then we kept, going through many other hearing horrible things to people who refused to help us, called killers on us, said many horrible things to us, that we are not meant to be in the country, are not meant to leave. And many times they used to say, "Oh, even if you will leave, you would die with grief." Sometimes they used to tell us that. So it was the most horrific thing to hear from people. You thought they were good people, or you helped each other. They went to work together with my parents, or they came to our homes, and good friends of my on both sides, on my dad's side, on my mom's side. It was hard for me to hear those things in my ears. But it was not easy. We kept hiding because the many Tutsis were being murdered everywhere. We didn't know whether our family was going to survive. And my mom kept doing whatever she could to take us to wherever she would think it will help us. Of course, sometimes it was not easy to find someone who will keep you for a few days. So many times we were hiding in the bushes. So, and it was hard. So of course, they were killing us one by one, and it got to a point where my brothers, they planned to kill my brothers. So, and that was actually one of the worst also time to see these babies and snatched away from us. And one of them was on my mom's back in her chest. And someone who used to be a neighbor, someone who grew up with my parents, came with a machete and a club, and they took my brothers. They took them. I never forget the image of how they were taken like sheep. It was hard for me to watch. And I don't even know, even now, even though my mom is a very strong woman, I don't know how she managed to live her life. That's why I call her my hero, to be able to be strong all her life. And the way my brothers were taken from us at the time, and screaming, the image of all of us screaming and asking to be taken, all of us to be killed. It never leaves my mind. It never leaves my mind. But we didn't know we were going to survive. We kept hiding, even though we didn't have any other safe place to hide anymore. But as I don't know if you were asking the question, during the genocide, rape was used as a weapon. So many women and girls were brutally raped and tortured some of them before they were murdered. So, and being a woman in the genocide, it was not easy. Whether you're young, a little girl, it was not easy at that time. Right after my brothers were killed, we didn't think we were going to have a safe space to hide anymore. So, like what many other girls and women went through, I endured rape as well. in the most horrible way as a young girl, 14 years old. So, and my mom had to see later, later on how I looked, and imagine a mother to see her own child after losing her precious kids, and then now her husband as well, and then now to see what had just happened to me. It's not easy for a parent. So, as you can imagine, after you go through that, you feel like you don't want to live anymore. I was a kid. My innocence was, robbed away from me. So the joy that little girl I was at that time was taken away from me. So it was not easy. It was not easy, but I was around a strong woman, my mom, my sister, and it was not easy. But we kept hiding until, thankfully, the RPF, the Tutsis who were in exile, who were fighting to stop the genocide, led by the current president, Paul Kagame. So that's how the genocide was ended. They stopped the genocide. But in our area, because there were many Tutsis were being murdered, it was far away, and actually we had to experience the whole 3 months in the genocide. So a lot of our families were killed on both sides, my grandparents, my uncles, and everyone I knew. And I know families that lost the entire families. And actually my area in Karongi district is, they found out that it's number one in the country that lost many families that are completely wiped out. So that gives you the image how the genocide was in that area. So it was bad. It was really bad, and we were left in pain. And now I survived with my mom, my sister, 3 of us, and very traumatized, carrying a lot of wounds and pain. And now we have to, to force ourselves to live on again and live a new life, and try to be healthy again and enjoy life again, even though it was not easy.
I can hear even in the words as you say them, the echo of your father's words, right? Of it's not going to be about what they've done to me, but about how I choose to respond. And, in knowing you, and in reading your book and just hearing you tonight, I see that so strongly, especially in your decision to talk about these really brutally difficult and deeply personal things. What made you decide to speak this way? What made you decide to be an advocate for survivors of rape? Because you're not just speaking your own story. I've seen you speak in so many contexts about women who suffer this way. And what is it? Why did you decide to do it? And what does it do for you to be able to speak this way now?
It was not easy. Right after the genocide, myself and my mom, we had to go through a painful ordeal, and she had to raise these 2 teenagers who were completely, who were traumatized. And thankfully, my mom went back to teach, and she was able to find the courage also to keep loving, to keep having the love within herself, and kept showing me that, despite the fact we carry the pain within ourselves, we should not carry hatred within us. So, and she showed love to even the kids of some of the people who have done horrible things to our families. So, and for me to see her, the way she was doing that, it's not like she was only telling us to love, she was also doing that at the same time. We could watch her, what she was doing. So, and of course, at the same time, I was this teenager who went back to school, and I was having the nightmares of all the things I've gone through, and the trauma was real within me. But at the same time, I never gave up on life, because I saw around me survivors who lost the entire families, and even those who don't even have, who live with, who are disabled because of how they were tortured during the genocide. And now I'm seeing women and girls who now who are having children from rape and living with HIV. And later on, of course, I found that I was HIV positive, but I became one of the fortunate ones because at least I had a mom, and at least I can lean on her shoulder and cry. So there were people who didn't have anywhere to lean on their shoulders. So when I came in this country, in the United States, of course, I was carrying a lot of pain, and I thought maybe coming to the US would be maybe a way of forgetting everything that happened to me. But of course, I was carrying those within me. So the pain was not going to go anywhere. And until I found a therapist and I started, talking to people who were kind enough to listen to me and gave me their time to talk when I didn't want to talk about it. And therapy really helped me a lot in so many ways to be able to open up, even go to the deepest pain that I never thought I was going to go to, at all. So, and it felt like a load was lifted off my shoulder. And that's when I decided to write a book about it. I realized I'm one of the survivors who have gone through rape during the genocide, and many of them are not talking about it because they carry the pain, the shame. It's not easy for them to speak about it. And I decided to share that painful ordeal, that painful story, and at the same time thinking about others. How can I be able to help them, also be a voice for them? And they can see me, they can see themselves in me. And, somehow maybe we can, they can find the courage to also start their healing journey. It's not easy, but also to make sure others understand the pain we go through, those who have gone through rape and living with the consequences, how difficult it is for many of them to talk about it, and how can we help them? How can we be there for them and support them in a way we can? So that was the plan for me, was to make sure that I'm there for others, and also to call others to be there for them, to support them, and in their psychological, journey of healing. To me, that was a plan and that was a purpose for me to talk about it. And also it helped me to continue, going through my journey of healing in the right way. So I felt like I'm there for those who are not alive and those who are alive. And I feel like I'm making sure that I'm contributing to the well-being of others in whatever small way I can. So.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, you bear witness for those who can't and those who don't, right? And this feels to me so particularly in its way Rwandan, this very powerful community, the way that you've mobilized your own pain and your own trauma to be able to help others. As I'm starting to go through the questions that our audience members are sending me, I'm seeing a lot of questions about healing, about where your strength comes from, about where your mom's strength comes from, and also about how Rwanda has healed and moved forward. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about that, because I do think the way you've gone through it in a way really reflects what Rwanda's journey has been as a nation since 1994.
Yeah. It was, as you can imagine, right after the genocide, the country was completely destroyed, infrastructure, people, hearts, people, and those who survived, they were living with the trauma. There was a lot to deal with. And for someone those who stopped the genocide and trying to make sure the country comes back to normal, it was a lot of work. For anyone who can hear this, it was not easy. And I don't know if you can imagine how easy to make sure those who committed the genocide live in the country, some of them, and also the survivors, making sure all those people live together in peace and making sure the country runs back to normal. And then making sure also everything the country is peaceful. Everybody works around safely, and it takes a lot of hard work. So, and that's why I really appreciate it for what they have done. They gave us a country where we feel safe, and all of you, everybody, and can visit the country and see where we are so far. So, and to me, I found that really amazing, and I can't even find the words to describe how happy I am to see that country. And every time I speak to my mom, she always tells me, I'm happy that I'm living in a country where I feel safe. I feel like I belong. I'm no longer being called someone who don't belong in the country. So it's really beautiful to hear, and even for me to see her, alive and to be able to experience that. So, and I'm grateful too. I had to experience that and be able to see that. So for me, my mom, the strength we got, of course, from where the government was trying to take the country, that strength comes from that first. And also to having a safe place, a safe country. And also to, it also comes from also a personal also journey, if the way you decided to live your life. And my mom chose to live a life where she didn't want to have hatred within herself. And she chose to tell her children, myself and my sister and my cousin at that time who was living with us. So, and she chose to educate us about that, to keep telling us that. And at the same time, we are Christian. Also, we believe in God. So that also has been part of our lives to help us really, love life again. And for me, I feel like really to see my mom's strength and also having God in our lives, and also has been really huge in helping us really, embrace life again. And also my personal journey to continue, going to therapy, talking about it, and knowing that life is worth living, despite the fact I've gone through traumatic experiences in my life. I'm here to live a healthy life. I deserve to have a healthy life. And I'm living for so many who cannot be able to live with my family. I think my dad will be happy to see me happy, to see me smile. So, and I wanted to experience that joy again in my life. And I know that my nephews and nieces will sense that from me. I also, because that when you carry the trauma, you inherit to your family, to those who comes from you, or your kids. I don't have kids, but I have nephews and nieces. But I feel like they look at me, so, and they learn from me. So I wanted them to learn to love, to appreciate life. So, and it has to start with me. So, and that's why I appreciate life every day. I get up being thankful to God that I'm alive, and being grateful for small things in life. So that really helps me embrace life and enjoy life, no matter what I experience. Yeah.
I mean, it's remarkable to see it, to see your strength, and even just in the 45 minutes we've had with you so far, right? You're very clear about the trauma, about the images that will never leave you. And at the same time, you're laughing, you're smiling, you're talking about what you deserve in life. And I think it's really remarkable to see both those things side by side in you. And, having spent time with you, I know that you're a person who's really full of love. And you talk about it a lot in your book, this ability to, you say, I think, live a life without anger or hatred. And I think that is an enormous testament to your spirit and your strength, and your mother's as well, right? That this is the example that you're following. We have so many good questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, everybody. I'm sorry. And I want to say, Consolee, I wish I could read them all out loud because so many of them are thanking you for your incredible bravery in being here tonight, for thanking this very difficult, sharing this very difficult story with us. And so maybe I'll copy and paste them and send them to you later.
Thank you.
So there's a question I'd like to start with from Roger. He says, thank you so much for telling your family's very personal yet painful story. Were any of the families that bravely helped your family Hutus themselves? And if you had any Hutu childhood friends, have you ever reunited with them? And I think maybe related to this, could you talk about, you know, sort of the relationships between Hutu and Tutsi in Rwanda today and the narrative, the ethnic narrative in Rwanda today? That's my question, adding it to Roger's.
Yeah, because the current government we have never really, they didn't want to encourage revenge, because revenge is not good. It's not healthy for the society. And then they removed ID card. That ID card that had Tutsis and Hutus and Twa is no longer there. So now we have ID card saying you are Rwandan. So they had to educate people how to love each other and see each other as Rwandans. Of course, it takes a lot of time to educate, because there were many decades of propaganda educating about the hatred against the Tutsi. Of course, that would take also many years also to educate people to change that narrative in their minds. But of course, the young people, you can see young people we have now in Rwanda, they are they don't see themselves as Hutus and Tutsis anymore. So you see, we actually, you can see people really understand it, and they love each other. They care one another, so they support each other. And to me, and my mom still live there. Everybody, except me, who lives here. So, and she has friends. I have friends, of course, some of them who are my classmates. So we're still very good friends, and we talk about it. We are open to talk about it. So, and those who have helped us, I don't know if in the question is there, those who have supported us in the genocide, we appreciate them. Some of them are really, good friends of my mom. They talk to her. So, except that one of them passed away, writer, I don't know where he passed away. We found out that later on that he's no longer alive. He was very, very, very good person. And I wish he was alive, really, to, I can appreciate him, what he did to us. So, and those, the very few, even the people who are unkind to us, really, those who we were able to speak to, especially for my mom, I never had really conversation with those people. So she has a good way of, she found a good way to talk to them. And of course, some of them have apologized, but not everybody. But my mom is a very kind person, compassionate person. Even if someone who never apologized to her, even if they come to her, ask for help, she will be helpful to that person. So that's the kind of a person she is. So she just wanted to live a life where she never hate anyone. So, and I feel like we are in a good place. We really managed to accept one another. It's a process, and I'm grateful that young people really got it. So, and it looks like Rwanda, we are heading in the right side, and hopefully that's why we tell our stories. That's why we educate about what happened, so that the young people can continue telling these stories and prevent anything else to happen again. So I love this quote from Elie Wiesel: when you listen to a witness, you become a witness. So, and we want to make sure the history is not forgotten, and generation can learn from it. So that's the purpose also of telling the story. So
thank you. Yes. what you just said about your mother and her willingness to help others, this willingness to rise above is really remarkable. We have a question from the audience about the legal system and the legal response to the genocide. And I thought maybe I'd give a little context and then ask the question. So after the genocide, there were essentially, I give you a second to have some water and catch your breath, essentially sort of 3 tiers of justice, right? International justice, International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, justice within Rwanda, court systems, people, going to prison, etc. And then the local justice, gacaca, these very homegrown solutions with the aim of people being able to live next door to each other, but also people being able to know what happened to their families, where quite literally their family members were buried, and to understand the truth of the fates of their loved ones. And so the question was, if you or your family had been involved in any of these processes or had any experience with post-genocide justice, so to speak. We take the word loosely.
Yeah, as you can imagine, there were many people who committed the genocide. Many of them were in prison. Others were, of course, left the country. And also there was, they used a homegrown solution, gacaca, which was a traditional system used to unite, small dispute in the communities. And now they use it also as a way of helping to trial the perpetrators of the genocide, the genocidaires. It was a well taught, it was a well done system, because there was no other way to do it, because the country was not meant to trial the genocide in the beginning. We didn't have many lawyers who could do that. And they had to do it in a way that was going to help the society at the same time. So there was also Ictr International Court, which was established to also trial the mastermind of the genocide. It was based in Arusha, Tanzania. Ictr, International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. And that was also there in a neighboring country to trial the mastermind, those who were captured in many other different countries where they were hiding at that time, so seeking safe haven. So, and they did their work as well. And to me, even though the genocidaires are all over the world, there are many of them, some of them who are still, because Ictr is no longer now working, but it was replaced by another court, which is now took over from Ictr. And gacaca also did the work, and then now it's no longer working anymore. But they've done incredible work because they were able to bring the perpetrators in the community to talk about what they have done. Many of them were able to say what they did, and what it helped to me, I feel like it allowed survivors to know where their people were, so that they can give them a decent burial, because there were many Tutsis who were thrown in a mass graves. So, or they were thrown in many different areas where they, after slaughtering them and murdering them. So, and it was at least a way of saying, this is where we put your person, so that you can give them a decent burial. So, and also some of them asked for forgiveness. So it was, to me, that was a good way to make sure at least justice was done to me. And we felt like at least, as a survivor, we are heard. So to me, I feel like there was no other ways they could have done it in a way that at least it would have helped us to feel like justice was there for us. So Ictr did their work, and now the next court, which is mechanisms that took over. So now they are doing their work as well. So hopefully, and the countries who are also part of helping us to make sure we see justice. So, and it's not easy.
No, it's very complicated, and especially with the goal of, you know, enabling your country to both have justice, but also to live side by side and move forward. We have just 3 minutes before we're going to hand it over to Dr. Joel to wrap up. So I want to ask you 2 quick questions. One is from one of the teachers among us tonight, and he says, thanks so much for having the courage to share your heart-wrenching story with us. And he asks something that I'm going to condense, and I think is so important for someone like him to be able to pass on to his students, but for all of us to hear tonight. And he said, you know, the Western powers ignored what was happening in Rwanda. They knew some powers, France, for example, had helped enable what was happening. What would you say to the Western powers that left Rwanda behind? And what would you say to the international community today as a survivor, as a witness, as a voice for what we have to keep in mind moving forward?
As a survivor, of course, I was young at that time. I didn't understand what international community was and what their role was at that time. So after learning how we were abandoned and how the genocide was, they could have done something to make sure it was not going to that magnitude we had it. So to me, it's not easy to see that. Of course, it's history. We see that it happened. To me, I feel like they could learn from our experience and make sure that other genocide, wherever they happen in the world, so they are preventable. Because when a genocide is about to happen, there are signs, and it's not like it happens just like that overnight. You know, immediately it happens. There are stages of the genocide. There are signs. There. I don't know if many of you have read Greg and Stratton, 10 Stages of the Genocide. You see that a genocide, when they get to a point where they murder people, it goes through stages, classification, and then of course it goes through different stages, humanization and all the other stages. So it's important also to for the international community to allow themselves to pay attention and be there for anywhere they see a sign that a genocide is about to happen, and also to give and put, punish the people who have committed those genocides. So and fight the culture of impunity. The culture of impunity, to me, I feel like the international community, it's something that they should work on, making sure that those who committed the genocide, those who are mastermind of the genocide, don't walk around freely. And
thank you, Consolee. Yes. No, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. This is
no problem.
Yes, no, I wanted to echo that, and that, those after stages, the impunity and denial, right, that we have a responsibility to fight those. Before I hand it over to Dr. Joe, I am going to answer the last question myself. Mugabo asked what the name of Consolee's book is and where it can be purchased. So this is Consolee's book, Tested to the Limit. It can be purchased on Amazon, but also I imagine independent booksellers. I encourage you guys to support those. Consolee, on behalf of the Board of Voices of Hope and all of us here tonight, before I allow Dr. Joe to do the final wrap up, I just want to thank you for spending this hour with us, for opening your heart to us in this way. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It really means a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, and thank you again, Consolee. My name is Dr. Joel Zaki, and I was asked to close our program tonight as a Voices of Hope board member, and because I have a personal connection with Consolee, whom I've got to know as a result of my work in Rwanda, training over 3,600 educators as a partnership between the Rwandan government and the University of Hartford. Please join me in thanking Consolee and Shiri for such a remarkable talk tonight. Consolee, you are an inspiration for all of us. Thank you for speaking with us tonight, and our deepest thanks to everyone in our audience for your engagement and spectacular questions. We're just about out of time tonight, and we're sorry we didn't get to all your questions. So Shiri and Consolee have graciously agreed to stay on with anyone who would like to hear answers to any of the questions we didn't get to. Also, if you'd like to purchase a copy of Tested to the Limit, a genocide survivor's story of pain, resilience, and hope, please follow the link in the chat. In honor of Women's History Month, we hope you will join us for our March Power of Words speaker series with Lucy Edlington, author of The Dressmakers of Auschwitz, on March 2nd, and Gwen Strauss, author of The Nile, the true story of a band of women who survived the worst of Nazi Germany, on March 13th. The 9 and many of our programs were brought to us thanks to our affiliation with the Jewish Book Council. If you like tonight's program, please check out our website for the rest of our events and consider making a donation at www.ctvoicesofhope.org. Use our text to give number, and you can even find us on Venmo. All of the ways to donate tonight are listed in the chat box. Thank you for coming. Thank you for a poignant talk, Consolee, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, my dear.
Thank you.
It looks like we may have a few people interested in hanging around to hear a few more questions. If you're in the process of leaving, don't worry about it, no pressure. But there are a few more questions. So I'm happy to go over one or two more. Got like 15 minutes before a child is going to need me. Sorry, Kathy. One of the questions in the chat was about why you came to the United States. And while I encourage everyone to read the book and find out, Consolee, would you talk a little bit about why you decided to come here?
Yeah. I remember there was a time, every time when I was at that time in Rwanda, I guess because of the trauma, I wanted to be in a place where I started my journey of healing in a very healthy way to me. So of course, I was so happy to be with my mom and be there. But at the same time, there was this voice in me that I needed to be somewhere else first. And actually became better because I'm more healthier to supporting, my country in a good way. So to me, to be there for everyone else. So, and the United States, I came here because I had a cousin who came here before me, and then I joined her. So, and that maybe I could have gone somewhere else, but because I had a cousin here, she came first, and then I joined her. So here, now we are 3 of us here in the US. Yeah, but the rest of our family is back home. So, and I'm happy to be here. I made good friends. There's no way I could have made friends if I didn't come here. So I've made wonderful friends, and many of them who are here, Shiri, Yael, oh yeah, a lot of people. So
a lot of people turned out to see.
I want to introduce you to my Aimable Mugabo. He became like a brother. He's a survivor. So he came recently to study at Brandeis University, just graduated his master's degree. So he's a survivor. He's like my brother as well. So he became a brother to me. I adopted him. So we adopted him.
It's wonderful to meet you.
Yeah. I
It's
thought
great to
it
have
was,
more Rwandans here tonight.
there was another one, but I thought he was, I don't know if he's here. Kizito Kalima, I don't know if he came. Edith is here. I don't know if she wants to show her face. Edith, she's like a sister, big sister to me. She works for the Shaw Foundation. She's here. I don't know if she, I see her.
Yes, I'm here.
She's incredible. A survivor as well. Does an amazing work with the Shaw Foundation. So yeah, I don't know, Shiri, if you met. So if you want,
Good to meet you.
want to invite someone to talk about the work of archiving the genocide stories and from at the Shaw Foundation, she's the one to talk to.
It's great to meet you, Edith. Nancy and Michael, I see you have your hand raised. I can't actually unmute you myself, but if you put the question in the chat, you can unmute yourselves. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. Consolee, wonderful presentation. Thank you. You mentioned that the genocide was a class conflict. Can you help me understand what the class distinction was between the Tutsis and the Hutu that led to that conflict? It seemed to me that the Tutsis as a minority were a higher class, were considered a higher class than Hutus, the majority. Was it a case of the mass people feeling that they didn't have a fair share of resources? Can you just give me a better understanding of what that class struggle was like, or how it unfolded? Is that too big a question? I should be in a history book.
I'm not a historian. I'm a storyteller, but I can explain and give a little bit of what it was to give you an understanding, like, but a historian can be better than me. So someone who studied history can be better than me, but I can give you a little background of what it was. So before we had, it was social classes before we had colonization. Before we had a colonization, the country is more about social classes. Tutsis, Hutus, and Twa, before in the monarchy time, it was more about social classes. If you had many cows, you can belong to Tutsis. And if you are, Hutu, it was considered as not wealthy. Tutsis was considered as wealthy. So you have to move from one class to another. So if you wanted to become a Tutsi, you own many cows, you become a wealthy person. It was more about like an elite class at the time. So, and when the Germans who came first, of course they had to leave because of World War I, and the Belgians took over. So that's why the Belgians decided to do what they call divide and conquer. So divide and conquer, it was a system where they looked at how the system was. These people knew how to move from one class to another, but without, it was not like a fight. It was more about, they knew how to move from there to another without having issues. So, and then they decided how, and the Belgians started to divide these people. So what they did, they measured our body, our nose. There's a photo of a Belgian measuring a man's nose at that time. So it's a very famous photo. Actually, it's everywhere in the archives, so they can show you that. So when they measured the nose and the height, and they started saying, oh, if you're a Hutu, you look a certain way. A Tutsi is tall, and maybe they like have long noses, they are tall. So they had to to give a description of what they think a Hutu looks like and a Tutsi looks like. So at that time, that's how they were planning a way to do it in a way that it goes in the mind of people. So they issued ID card. That ID card so became like a stamp on you. If you were like a Tutsi, that means your whole family will be Tutsi. So, and a Hutu, so you'll be a Hutu. So that ID card, it had a Tutsi, Hutu, and Twa. So they had to mention wherever they put you, that's why you were put at that time. So, and to me, I feel like that ID card was a way of like, if you carry that ID as a Tutsi, it really, it was not easy because your whole family become a Tutsi if everyone, you know, comes from your family will become a Tutsi. So, and at that time, the hatred, because of how they told the Tutsi and Hutus are different, the hatred grew to a point where it took us to a genocide. And unfortunately, what hurts me the most is that when the Belgians left, they could have switched again and go back to a normal life, but still it grew to doing more and more harm and bad things to their fellow humans. So, and now we became ethnic groups. It was a social class, and then it became ethnic groups, Tutsis and Hutus and Twa. So, and it was a social class, and then it became ethnic groups. So, and now people would say, how do you know a Tutsi when in the country, how you know, because we all look alike. That ID card was a way of knowing who you are. And families knew each other. Rwanda is very small. People will know who you are. So it was very easy to know a person who they were. So, yeah.
I think you undersell yourself, Consolee. I think your grasp of history and your way of explaining it is really clear. So I think that was great, right? The transition from class to ethnic group, essentially through categorization and the use of power, right? Who the Belgians handed power to afterward. I know we do only have a couple minutes, and it was pointed out to me that we have a number of other survivors from Rwanda present on this call. And so I thought maybe we could recognize all of you here together today. And there's Consolee and Mugabo and Edith and Claude. I think you're there as well. I don't know if there's anyone.
Oh, I didn't see Claude. Yes. Hi, Claude.
I don't know if there's anyone else as well, but I want to recognize all of you for being here this evening, for joining us, and for coming to support Consolee in sharing her story.
I'm here.
It's wonderful to have so many of you here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your support and being there. I mean, I hope they can share their stories too. So Edith has done an amazing job sharing her story, and hopefully Amable and Claude will do the same thing and share their stories.
Unfortunately, I think I am going to be drawing this to a close in just a minute. As was said in the chat, I encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about Consolee and her story to check out her book. Here it is again. And to go to her website. Consolee does many speaking engagements throughout the tri-state area and in other places. And so I hope you'll have a chance to catch her again. I know she also did a Speak Up with Voices. And so if, Speak Up and learning to tell your story is something you're interested in, I encourage you to sign up for the Voices emails, keep an eye out. I want to thank you all again for being here tonight, and Consolee, you especially for sharing your story with us and for sharing your smile and your laughter and your joy.
I appreciate you. You are truly an amazing friend. Thank you so much. And appreciate Kathy. I appreciate Robin, everybody, Sarah, and Dr. Joy. He's not here. He left, I think. And the voices of hope. Thank you very much. I appreciate you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you again, Consolee. We hope you'll join us again at our next event.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much. Have a good day, week.
You too. Goodbye, everybody. I'm going to sign off. Thank you
Goodbye.
again.